What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day and another video. So as I said previously in the end of the side skirt and splitter video, the next project I'm going to be tackling is a fiberglass enclosure for a 10-inch sub in the trunk. I currently have a 10-inch sub set up in the trunk now, but I'm not really happy with the overall performance of the sub and the space that it occupies. So to alleviate that, I'm going to build my own custom side mount to go in the corner of the trunk space. I'm going to show you what I bought and give you a rundown of the plan, and then we'll get started. So, stick around. Alright, so in order to get this project started, I had to buy the essentials. With the essentials, I got fiberglass mat. Inside this bag, I also have additional fiberglass mat and fiberglass cloth. I got a box of chip brushes for the resin, masking tape to protect the trunk, bought a jigsaw to cut this 3/4 inch MDF, bought the cheapest fleece I could find. I know it's pink, but doesn't matter, don't judge me. I got clear plastic, aluminum to protect the trunk surface, and gloves to protect my hands. I got some Melwood contact cement to adhere the fleece to the actual mold once we get it set, resin, nails to hook some of the hook the base to the actual sub rings once I get them built. Again, respirators, breathing mask for safety, and a little paint mixing pail with some little clear plastic things to help reuse the pail over and over again when I start to mix the resin. The sub I'm using, I went with a Scar Audio SDR10 dual voice coil 4 ohm load. The current setup I'm running, which I'll show you in a minute, is a 300 watt system. The Scar website rates this at a 500 to 600 watt RMS sub, so I'm hoping that even at 450 watts, it's still going to sound better than the 10 that I have in there now. Yeah, so that's everything I have for the project. Let me show you what I am currently running in the vehicle. The setup that I was running in the car was a Kicker Comp S 10 and a little ported enclosure I got off Amazon. The sub itself was powered by a Kicker CX 300.1. It's a 300 watt RMS amp at 2 ohm to help with the signal and control. Since I was running off the factory wiring for the Bose system, I got an LC2i audio control module. It's mounted on the box right now, but it's going to be remounted. The LC2i is going to go up under the carpet on the deck, and the amp is going to go under the passenger seat. So I've got to rerun all my wiring again, but that'll be for another video, another day. So I went back and forth on which side to use for the proper amount of airspace for this sub. This sub takes around 1 to 1.5 cubic feet of airspace. So instead of going on this side of the car, I decided to opt for this side. Another reason I opted for the passenger side of the car is for those that don't have a spare. You can see the spare and the jack locations are on the driver's side. So it'll be a little bit easier to access the jack and the tools with the enclosure on the passenger side of the car. Already got my tape line down. I'm going to outline this edge onto the MDF, get it cut out, and we'll go from there. So, stand by. Alright, saw's ready. Safety glasses for safety. Let's go ahead and get cutting. Apologize for the momentary delay. I mean, you know, not that you even noticed, because of, you know, video magic and all. But I just can't work in a dirty shop. I can't. So I had to sweep everything up and dust stuff off because I can't stand working with dust everywhere. Anyway, so here is the trimmed piece for the floor of the enclosure. It is dust free, so I can put it back in the car and test fit it. So we're going to do that now together for the first time and see how wonderful or terribly tragic my measuring and cutting was on this piece of MDF board. So let's see what happens. All right, so from around here, it actually looks pretty good. Comes around, you know, could be a little more snug in there, but you know, it is what it is. And then you got back here, not really sure how I did that, unless that's just how the carpet fits. Hold on, it is. That's how the carpet sits. Okay, so yeah, I cut it to the size that it's supposed to be for the panel. So next thing, I'm gonna get a sander out, and I want to bevel the outer edge on top here. So when I start to stretch everything over it, there's a nice smooth transition. It's not real, this hard edge isn't evident. And then I'm gonna try and notch the bottom half under here so I can staple into and not have a whole gobbly mess up here. So I don't have a router. So I'm gonna try to do this with a Dremel tool, and hopefully that works. So you'll be back shortly. Ugh. Hate sawdust. So it would have been much easier with a router of some sort. You know, was done with a sander. When you got what you got to make do, right? So as you can see, I got the top of the board rounded, nice and round all the way through into the back of that portion right there. That's where the fleece will stretch around. This will allow a much greater surface area for the resin to saturate into the wood and keep the two pieces together than it would if I just had left a straight angle there and had a hard line. Now what you see is the graphite that's running across the lower portion of this wood. That is where I'm going to have to get the Dremel tool out and notch the underside of this piece of wood. So when I stretch the fleece across, I can staple it into that hole, and when I start to lay the resin on it, it has an area to fill instead of adding an unnecessary uneven hunk of resin on the outside of the surface area that I want this to stop at. Word of advice, plan on doing this, use a router if you have one, because it's a whole lot easier. But I don't have a router, so I'm not going to use one. I'm just going to use these, put my safety glasses on, use my Dremel tool with my cutoff disc, and hope for the best. So let's see what happens. I feel like I'm gonna go through a lot of these. Yeah. After 6 broken cut-off discs, as you saw, I finally got my recessed edge, my bevel. It's done. So now when I go to wrap the fleece around, it'll have a nice area to recess into, so there's not all this awkward lumpy edging when I go to apply the resin. It's all down. It's not clean, it's not neat by any means, but it'll get the job done for not having a router. With that said, I'm gonna stop here and I'll pick back up on another day. As you can see, new day, new outfit. It's gonna take me a while to get this done with the limited time I have from day to day, from week to week. But nevertheless, we're gonna move on to the next step. Next step is protecting the carpeting. So when I do the fiberglass, I don't get anything on the carpet and it keeps everything safe. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take all this masking tape that I have here. I'm gonna do about 2, 3 layers of masking tape through the carpet in the corner where I plan on using the fiberglass, and we're gonna go from there. So let's do it. Tape is done. I have the blue outline, as you can see, that is going to be where the actual fiberglass is going to stop. So I have my trim lines to know where to cut to. I have the carpet protected by the plastic liner. All that is taped down. Now all that's left to do is mix my resin and start laying the resin on the piece of wood, and then fiberglass mat cloth off the wood onto the actual tape. So go ahead and get started. So what I've been doing in order to make sure that I don't waste any resin is I have these little mixing cups. They are 100 milliliter cups. I have been mixing 100 milliliters of resin every time. That comes out to about right around 3.3 fluid ounces. This resin requires 10 drops of hardener per ounce. So for every 100 milliliters, which is 3.3 ounces, I'm doing around 28 drops. That's not quite the same amount of drops that it recommends, but I want to have a little bit more time to work with the product, and that will help get me that extra product time that I need. So I'm going to finish mixing this up and then set you down and we'll get started again. Stay tuned. When using chop mat, it's kind of a big deal and important that when you use chop mat and you take it off of the chop mat off of the roll, that you rip the chop mat instead of cut the chop mat, because when you cut it with scissors or a knife, the frayed edges don't fray, and what you end up with is just a flat piece of mat, whereas this is shredded and lacerated on the edges, which is going to be easier to get it to mend in with the lower pieces of the material a little bit better, because you got those hairs that are going to reach out and extend and grab what's below. Another thing with chop mat is that you want to ensure that when you're applying resin, that you're dabbing it and not wiping it, because dabbing it is going to force the air bubbles out of the actual chop mat. So that way, when you go to add your next 2-3 layers, what have you, you're not going to have air bubbles in between the mat that are then going to blow out on you when the sub really starts hitting. So you want to make sure that you are dabbing all the air bubbles out of the chop mat when you're doing this. Well, after almost a whole layer of mat, that's what we have so far. It's at the little body line up to there, and then from there back, I ran out of time. I gotta get dressed to get ready for work. So, this is gonna have to wait till another day to continue. What I did do, I hit it with a heat gun just to speed up the curing process on it, so that way when I start to drive, the piece of wood doesn't slide around on me, and it won't. It's hot, it's solid, it's in there. I gave it a little tug, so we're good to go. So we're gonna stop right here for today. Probably gonna go ahead and post this video, and then I'll pick up in the next one when I start the rest of the mat process. Stay tuned. Out.